fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
The constitutional point of view was critical for Jefferson's support of the Bill of Rights.
As we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens, I can hear you!
Is time running out? Welcome back to the Hayden Collins Radio Program, the Intelligence Syndicate. It's Saturday, and it's January, so it's cold outside. I had so much fun with that over the holidays. In fact, if you type in "it's cold outside" on YouTube, you get to see a really good lip sync video that was done using child actors and dancers from the 20s. And it's actually very, very cute. It's very, very, and they changed the words to milkshakes and things like that. It's really nice. It was a good holiday season. We did helped with the toy drive, knocked that out, did our New Year's thing, and here we are now. Beginning of this year, we have a format change. So understand there's a format change with the show. And we've bounced around a little bit. So we've got some networks that we're on. We're actually just now starting with Coffee Party Network, or I don't even know. I got to get the official title there. So we're actually out and about a little bit further. Okay, so let me kick this one off. Not going to talk about government shutdowns. Not going to talk about anything else on that level. But I want to talk to you about negotiations. And I want to talk to you about being predictable and being unpredictable. Now, I got to take you back in history because I love doing this. I love taking everybody back in history to show that this has happened before. And then not only has it happened before, it actually worked. So we're going to play some game here. So let me play the game. Wow, back to 1937, 1938. 1936 was kind of the big shift in Europe. Okay? And there were still a lot of Germans inside the United States. We had, embassies, consulates, all kinds of stuff going on. And all kinds of things across the board. I mean, understand at that time we were still negotiating with the Japanese over steel and things like that. But there was solid German heritage. There was solid German participation, not only in government, but it was everywhere. There were German students in our universities. We had German officers studying with American officers, okay? In fact, this one everybody should look up. And you know, this is actually good reading, too, if anybody wants to indulge in this book. It's good reading. It's called Battle Leadership by Captain Adolf von Scheel, and it's Schell. It's only 100 pages, but it's a great book. So, this is what you do when you're part of the German government back in the late 30s. You study the ways of your potential enemies. So, you would have German officers get their hands on all the U.S. military manuals, Navy manuals, so on and so forth, where it broke down what you were supposed to do, how you were supposed to do it, step by step by step by step, and they would study that. And they would study it, and they would study it, and they would study it until they knew the American manuals better than we did. And the purpose behind that was that the French army was, well, they're meticulous, and they followed their own manuals. Polish army did the same thing. Everybody kind of did the same thing. If you were in the army, there were strict rules. They were strict guidelines. You had to do exactly the way this is, and yada, 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 or you got court-martialed or shot or whatever the case may be. So the German army was the same way, of course. I mean, they had predictable items as well. So let's go forward a little bit. 1943, in the middle of the war, and Fortress Europe has not been penetrated yet. Of course, we're getting ready to do D-Day, June 6, 1944. So, American manuals are everywhere. Germans are studying them inside and out. They have copies of them everywhere. They know that the American army is coming, and they want to predict what's going to happen, and they want to, and understand, in an argument, in a discussion, if you know what the person is going to do next, you win. If you know what the person is going to do 3 steps down the road, you win. It's like playing chess, and if you know what the other guy is going to do, you can plan around his moves. He can't get away from planning around his moves, but you can certainly plan around his moves and beat him at his own game. So, here let's enter into D-Day, June 6, 1944, and consequently the battles that happened after that. Now, there was a big thing about the Ghost Army, and I highly recommend everybody look up the Ghost Army. That's it's declassified now, but boy, you talk about Department of Dirty Tricks. But also look up Patton's Cardboard Army, because Patton had the Germans convinced that he was going to be the guy that led the attack on Europe, and they built an entire army of cardboard around him with fake radio messages and fake, messages going everywhere and fake type things, this, that, and the other. And they made sure they leaked it in front of known German agents in Europe. So they had all of the Germans convinced that they were going to attack in Calais, and Patton was going to be the guy to do it. So the Germans said, aha, we know what the Americans are going to do. We know that Patton's leading it. We know that where they're going to go. So guess what? We're going to take our biggest, strongest armies, and we're going to set a trap for them in Calais. So as soon as the Americans land, we're going to kick butt and take names. Because the Germans read the American manuals. They knew exactly what was going to happen and when it was going to happen. Now, we're also a victim of our own manuals, too. Okay, for example, one of the biggest mistakes at D-Day was a group of our armies, and when I say armies, understand when you have armies attacking, they're an army group, so this is actually a title. In fact, the group that was led by Theodore Roosevelt's grandson, when they landed on the beach, they landed at the wrong beach. There were no Germans there. So they just got their act together and started driving inland and trying to find Germans and attack them. Well, when you look back on history and you say, holy cats, we dropped all these guys off on the beach right in front of Germans, and a bunch of them died trying to get in there. All we had to do is land at the beach that they weren't at, and we could have waltzed right in. There's a lesson learned. But, historical data implies that we should attack, and you attack where the enemy is. Okay, and we accidentally attacked where the enemy was not and made more headway. So we learned a lesson there. But the Germans, knowing how predictable the United States Army is and how predictable the French are, meticulous they are, and the British, knew that once we attacked at Normandy, it was a mirage. It was a diversion. It had to be, because all the records they had indicated that, Calais was going to be Patton, and he was going to land there. So once they figured out that Normandy was the main attack, they started reacting. So now it goes to the unit level commanders, to the platoon leaders, to the captains of companies, to armored units, infantry units, artillery units. So ground-to-ground combat, they've trained against American simulations, knowing that, hey, here comes an American infantry platoon. We know it's only 42 men, 2 submachine guns and a mortar. We know how to defeat that because we've designed our platoon to stop that one. Okay? Well, the Americans, we didn't necessarily follow our own rules. Well, I hate to say that. I really hate to say that we didn't follow our own rules, but that's exactly what we did. We did not follow our own rules. So it started confusing the Germans. Now, let me give you the best example of how we didn't follow our own rules. Like a German rifle unit had 59 men, 11 submachine guns, 6 machine guns, and 3 horse-drawn vehicles. Think about that. An American rifle unit was not designed with horse-drawn individuals or, things of that nature that would hamper you in combat or whatever the case may be. It was just the European way. So an American unit basically had 36 men, 6 automatic rifles, 4 machine guns, and 1 mortar. And that's a platoon. You can see the difference there already. But, so they said, all right, we can go against those Americans. This is the way it's going to be. Now, historically, we look back on this, and once the units got to the beach, we all know the story. 82nd Airborne scattered everywhere, 101st Airborne scattered everywhere. Armored units are scattered everywhere. People landed at the wrong beach. There's no unit integrity. Commanders, didn't have their own units. They assembled units on the fly. That's my favorite. The infantry units got out there and he said, all right, where's your commander? I don't know. Well, you're with me. Get over here. All right, roger that, sir. And they'd form units to go after the Germans. So the unit strength for American units was based on what they could get their hands on. Now, I know this doesn't seem important right now, but you got to think this through for a second. The Americans are predictable. We read all of their manuals. We know that if we come across an infantry company, that's 100 men. Well, under normal circumstances, that was probably correct. But since we were so unorganized, and since we had officers that thought fast on their feet, we had infantry companies that had platoons of tanks attached to them. You're sitting there going, well, wait a second. How does an infantry company have a platoon of tanks attached to it? Well, A, the platoon of tanks is separated from their unit. They have no idea where it is. They want to engage in the battle. They're supposed to support infantry. This captain walked over to the lieutenant. He goes, where's your unit? He goes, I don't know. He goes, fine, you're with us. Let's go. And then they go chase down Germans. So this German unit, they said, okay, here comes an infantry unit. We planned against that. All we got to do is assign 2 of our infantry units to take that 1 infantry unit out. So they assigned 2 infantry units to go at it and discover, holy crap, there's a platoon of tanks there. We didn't plan on that. That's not in their manuals. They didn't follow their own rules. The biggest frustrating event for Rommel, and in fact Jodl that wrote about it as well, the biggest frustrating event was the Americans were unpredictable. You couldn't depend on them to follow their own rules. Most American units up until the end of the war were overstrength by 20 to 40%. Combat units, of course, went in overstrength and didn't come out overstrength, but they went in at strength or greater. But none of the units were at strength. They always had mismatched units. When you have an artillery section that's assigned to a battalion, and then all of a sudden you discover, oh, there's 3 tank platoons assigned to that battalion as well, and a couple of anti-tank guns, and the Germans assign what they thought should take on that battalion and get over and discover that they got mixed units everywhere. They lose. When you think you know exactly what the enemy is going to do, you lose. You can't present yourself as being predictable, because then they know how to plan against you. I know it sounds very simple, and it's kind of detailed listening to this explanation for combat and things of that nature, but this applies to everything. If you are predictable, and you maintain the same thing day after day after day, and in some cases, this is a good thing. Taxes should be very predictable. I mean, things of that nature. Making sure the car is running every day. Maintenance should be very predictable. So many miles, you got to do this, so many miles, you got to do that. There are failures, and there's things outside the bell curve, but they are predictable. They're called life cycles. Okay? So you have this whole nomenclature out there that you know how some things are going to react. You know how some things are going to do under certain situations, and you can predict the outcome and prepare for it. Okay, so now we can get into politics. Now that that entire explanation is done. If you are predictable in politics, do you think you're going to be effective? That is the question of the day. If you are predictable in politics, do you think you're going to be effective? I got some very sad news for you. If you are predictable in politics and you are cornered into a situation to where you are very predictable, then you better have a heck of a good base, because you're not going to last that long. Because all the enemy has to do is set you up for failure politically, watch you do what they expect you to do, and as you do exactly what they expect you to do, they set a trap for you and you fall right into it. So being unpredictable in an environment that requires you to have success and keep your enemies, guessing what you're going to do next is probably a pretty good thing in politics. Now, it makes good press. They sell a lot of papers and, TV and radio ads. That's always a good thing for the press, because that's what they're designed to do. The press is designed to make money. They've got to make money. They got to sell ads. That's what they do. They quit reporting a long time ago. Now everything's sensationalized. So you've got to do something that's unpredictable, that makes headlines, that keeps the press going, so you stay in the press all the time. And not only do you stay in the press all the time, it doesn't matter if it's good press or bad press, as long as it's you. That way you suck all the air out of the room, nobody else has an opportunity to do anything, and nobody else can predict what you're going to do next. The other thing that Rommel talked about, and this is Field Marshal Rommel, if you ever get the chance to read about him and his comments and the other things he said, one of the things he said, he said, we lost the war not to the American soldier, not to his tanks, not to the planes. We lost the war to the deuce and a half, which is a great big truck. It's a 2.5-ton truck that delivers supplies. The Germans did not have the logistical supply chain to maintain what they needed. They kind of lived off the land. Well, not literally, but they kind of lived off the land. They moved into a local economy. It was the local economy that provided for that army. Kind of the European way. Well, when the Americans came over there, they knew there was nothing left. So they had truck after truck after truck, and when we started advancing, we started making main supply routes. And the problem with our main supply routes is we didn't know where our armies were going. There was a while there that nobody knew where Patton was. They just knew he was in enemy territory, moving forward, and they couldn't keep up with him, and his supplies couldn't keep up with him. He had to send back units to find the supply line to take these supplies forward. They had outrun the supply lines. So he was so unpredictable, he was unpredictable to his own army. And the Germans had to react to that. If anything, I hope you take away from this is the understanding that being unpredictable, engaged in politics or engaged with an enemy is important. And being predictable is not necessarily that important. Now, understand, I know I'm going to get comments on this. There's a difference between being predictable and being reliable. The results have to be reliable. Patton was unpredictable, but he was reliable. Knew where the enemy was, went and did what was necessary. Reliable. He was far from predictable. All right, we come back from the break. Special segment. Now, I understand new format this year for the show. New format. We're going to start off the year with an hour-long format. We've got new interns for this year, so we've got to warm the interns up, get them used to doing things. We have quality, we have writing, we have on-air personalities. So in a little while, we'll get the roundtables warmed up, and we'll start having youth group roundtables between the universities. and we will start presenting ideas. Now, just like last time, we had, 16 Republican candidates for president and, 4 for Democrat. We had an intern for each one, and they followed them until they dropped out. I hope to do the same thing this time. So if you're out there and you want to be an intern to the show, we are going to have an assignment for you. Now, and you think, oh my gosh, which one am I going to get? We draw them out of a jar. We draw the candidates out of a jar. So you don't know if you're going to get Democrat, you don't know if you're going to get Republican, and you don't know which one you're going to get. But you have to do your due diligence as an individual to research that candidate and follow them through the election so you can talk about it during the roundtable. This is really important because it's going to serve two things. One, it's going to teach you to look at somebody else's point of view, not necessarily your own, and that will help you get out of the political bubble. And it's going to help you understand that not all good ideas come from one party. That kills me. Believe it or not, ideas may come from somewhere else other than your own party. I don't know how these people get that polarized. All right, we'll come back from the break. We'll kick it off and see what goes down the road.